What's going on? It's the Big Rig Bull, Texas truck accident lawyer Reshard Alexander here again today on a Sunday afternoon. So today we're going to talk about, well, we're not going to talk really. I'm going to put together this podcast, the Big Rig Bull podcast. We are probably going to talk about cargo securement. I'm not exactly sure yet though. So hold on. I'm trying to be a lot more healthier going forward with the things I put in my body and how I eat and all that type of stuff, because I got kids obviously and I got to take care of myself. So I'm starting to drink more water. I'm drinking more water now, and it's so hot outside, man. You have to drink water. I mean, my heart goes out to people who have to live out in those conditions, because I just don't see how it is possible to live in that type of heat 24/7. The problem with creating materials, marketing, advertising materials, is that you gotta stay consistent. You gotta be consistent. It's gonna take some time to get back into the real groove of things as far as pushing this content out. So luckily I don't have to go to court tomorrow, so I can just grind. So right now it sounds like a mess because I can't even remember how to lace the tracks up right now. It's a grind. I mean, I'm so tired, man. That heat took something out of me yesterday that I wasn't prepared for. It really did. I mean, it exhausted me. You know, another thing that sucks about working on the weekends, at least in this little office that I have right now, is that the AC is not on. How about this for a podcast intro? How about this? Oh, that's a definite winner. No. Now, some people might wonder at this point, but why am I interested in truck accident law? The skeptics would say, oh, well, he's just about the money. But that wouldn't be true, because you don't know me. I grew up in an era of like Transformers. Who was the leading Transformer? Optimus Prime. That's right. I enjoy, mechanics. My dad used to work on cars, heavy machinery, like the Kenworth W900 Aerodyne is a work of art. This is a work of art. This is something that human beings have created to actually travel and move goods that others need thousands of miles in a few days. So I enjoy it. I've practiced, like I said before, a variety of areas of law, and I wasn't always happy with those areas. Before I went to law school, I worked 3 jobs at the same time. For an insurance company, as the claims adjuster during the daytime. That job was like from 8 a.m. to 5. I would go home, lay down for about 4 hours or so, go to my 3rd shift job at a home improvement store. And at that store, from 10 to 4 or 10 to 6, roughly somewhere around there, depending on if it was weekends or not, I would work that job. And what I did at that job is I unloaded the lumber off of the 18-wheelers on using a forklift when they arrived every night. So I was in charge of the entire lumber section, making sure it was straight, put together and everything when the store opened back up. Then on the weekends, when I didn't have to work at the home improvement store, I unloaded trucks for like a high-end retail dining wear place. I'll just leave it like that. And so I worked the back end of that store while I work my insurance job and stuff during the day. And but I enjoy truck accident law. I enjoy personal injury law mostly because I like the idea of being able to help the little guy. And I think anyone that knows me personally knows that I have pretty much for my whole life I always kind of pull for the little guy because I can relate to the underdog. So that is what had naturally drew me to this area. I did criminal, I did family. I just don't like all the bickering about kids and stuff like that. Someone else loves that area of law, so let them do that. That's great. To be able to effectively help people, because I think the best lawyers out here, they may not have it at first, but I think if you really want to be a good lawyer, you have to be interested in the stuff that you're doing. Like when I come into work, when I say I'm going to the office and stuff, to me, it's not like, oh, I'm going to the office. Oh, I got to go to work. Because that's how some people feel about their jobs, and I feel sad for them. But for me, when I go into the office, it's like, man, I'm finna go, send out a settlement demand, or oh man, I'm about to file this lawsuit, or oh man, I'm about to, start a vlog or start some new marketing, avenue or whatnot. And it's thrilling because you need to know who you're dealing with. You need to know when you're talking to attorneys and you're talking about like who's going to represent you in a case and stuff. It's good to have a kind of a background of who this person is, where they come from, what are they about, because that can give you a better understanding of how they view you, how they're going to treat you, how they come from a place where they didn't have it all or they don't have it all, so they can understand where you are now. Because a lot of people don't understand that. I would never talk bad about another attorney, but I just don't think sometimes that we can relate all the time. Because as an attorney, you get bogged down into the workload or thinking about, well, yeah, I got to answer this guy's call. I got to do this. I got to do that. But you have to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes and understand where they are. They didn't expect to be in that situation. They didn't expect to get injured, So you have to have a heart in all of this. And that's the biggest thing, at least to me. And that's all I have to say about that. All right, so we're going to go pretty quickly through all this. Today we're going to talk about cargo securement. This is going to be part one of cargo securement because there's so much to cover in something like this. There's no way I could possibly go through the entire thing. So what do you need to know? Okay, well, not only am I a truck accident lawyer, but before I became a truck accident lawyer and went to law school, like I told you, I was the guy that when the truck driver pulled up to the home improvement stores, I was the guy who unloaded all the lumber third shift, and I handled that whole lumber section. So I'm kind of familiar with how this is supposed to be tied down when it comes to lumber and stuff like that, just off of past experiences. But we need to understand what exactly causes cargo wrecks, and then how does it affect truck drivers and motor carriers if they don't do what they're supposed to do? What should we be looking for when we are reviewing all this information? Okay, so like I said, this is very basic. We're going to just fly through this real quick so you'll get a basic understanding of what happens in cargo wrecks. So the Federal Motor Carriers Safety Association has put together a CSA program. It's called Compliance, Safety, and Accountability Program. So truck drivers and motor carriers are kind of like scored by this. It's kind of like their report card. When they do something bad, then it can affect their score. And once their score gets to a certain point, certain things are put in play with the FMCSA, such as they may get notification letters, they may get inspections on hand at their place of business that focus specifically on the problem, or they may have comprehensive inspections that look at the entire motor carrier and how they're operating. Additionally, they may get an out of service letter. If that's like the death knell, though. I mean, that is like what generally will really hurt someone, because that says they can no longer drive as a motor. They can no longer employ people to drive as motor carriers, or the truck driver can no longer drive, because sometimes the business is actually owned by the operator or the driver. So there are 7 basics within that CSA program, or 7 scores that you can get, 7 categories. One of the categories, the one that applies most importantly to cargo securement, is vehicle maintenance. So vehicle maintenance is the category that all this cargo securement, all this stuff is scored under. Okay, so if someone gets into a wreck and it's because of the fact that they didn't secure their load properly, that vehicle maintenance score is going to go down. All right, and additionally, there are about 350 things that you can be cited for under the vehicle maintenance CSA basic, and at least 100 of those apply directly to cargo securement. So it just goes to show you how important it is. I mean, not only is it important because of the fact that motor carriers and drivers can potentially lose their ability to operate, but it's also very important because of the fact that it can impact the public out here on the roadways if we have a rogue driver or a motor carrier who refuses to operate properly. So for drivers and motor carriers, this is not like criminal law. I mean, the law is much stricter when it comes to this type of stuff because of the fact that you're driving a huge piece of machinery, and it can impact and it can devastate people out on the roads. It's like driving a tank among scooters for the most part, because no conviction or out of service letter is needed to affect your basic score. So you don't have to, if you have a violation at a roadside inspection, that's going to cause your score to go down. You don't necessarily have to wait to have a conviction on your record from a traffic citation or something like that in order for your scores to start going down through the CSA program. Now, when you have a violation, the carrier score, it's going to stay on that carrier score and affect that score for at least the next 2 years. When it's a driver score, it's going to affect it for at least the next 3 years. The only saving grace that a truck driver or a motor carrier would have is the fact that over time, those infractions or violations will diminish over time. But like I said, they're going to stay there for 2 years if you're a carrier, 3 years if you're a driver. Additionally, when we're talking about the cargo securement and who needs to know this, who needs to understand this, it's not just necessarily commercial motor vehicles. Okay, it's really the vehicles that are covered are vehicles that have a gross vehicle weight rating, a gross combination weight rating, or a gross vehicle weight, or a gross combination weight of 10,001 pounds or more. Okay, that's a lot to say. Okay, but basically what you need to know is that if your vehicle weighs 10,001 pounds or more, you're going to be held to this standard when it comes to knowing how cargo is supposed to be secured on that vehicle. So that's something to think about, and that's something to know. Okay. Additionally, another vehicle that is covered, which we talked about this on last Friday, I think, when I talked about hazardous materials transportation law. Transporting hazardous material in not in any quantity, but in a quantity that requires placarding. So if you see a car or a truck, not a car, but if you see a truck out here that has one of those diamond placards on it, that means that they have to abide by 49 CFR Part 393 as far as how they secure that cargo, right? Now, what causes cargo wrecks? Well, number one, improper securement of the cargo. And what I mean by that is, if the cargo is not distributed correctly on the back of that bed, if it's not secured with tie downs, and if the vehicle equipment, the stuff that is that the trucker is going to carry on the vehicle to help him secure or her secure the load, if those three things are not tied, if they're not tied down and they're not handled correctly, those will cause a cargo securement for sure. So if you have a bunch of lumber that you're transporting to Lowe's, or a truck driver has a bunch of lumber that they're transporting to Lowe's, and it's not distributed correctly, and it's not secured correctly, and the things that the driver used to secure the load are not put away correctly, those things are likely going to cause a huge catastrophe out here on the roads. Okay. The number two thing that causes cargo wrecks is driver vision obscurement. So the cargo should never inhibit the driver from seeing out the front, the left, and the right sides of that cab or that compartment. Okay, so if they can't see outside on the left or the right, and there are some exceptions, but if they can't see out the left and the right and the front, that's a violation of that 49 CFR Part 393. Okay. Number three, driver's inability to move. The driver should be able to freely move arms and legs and everything else inside that driver cab. If they can't move in that cab, it's a violation of 49 CFR 393. All right. Driver's inability to access emergency equipment. So if there's emergency equipment that they have that they need to access to be able to stop whatever is happening at the time, if they can't get to it, guess what? It's a violation. And the last thing is driver inability to quickly exit the vehicle cab or driver's compartment. So there should be nothing impeding. None of that cargo should be spilling over in a way that the driver cannot get out of the vehicle and handle whatever they need to handle expeditiously. All these situations, especially number one, improper securement, distribution, securement, and vehicle equipment. All these things right here are top reasons why you have cargo wrecks. Because if it's not tied down correctly, you're not using the proper equipment to tie it down, you're gonna have a situation on your hands. And the thing about truck drivers, and the thing that people really need to understand, is that civilians can go to jail for driving drunk or doing something that is outside the scope of the law. But with truck drivers, because of the fact that they have such a huge task in front of them, it's a lot more serious. I mean, they're carrying 26,000, 30,000, 40,000 pounds of materials or whatnot, and these vehicles can cause much more significant damage than the average passenger vehicle. So this is why we have all these laws in place. People complain about the laws or whatnot, but if we didn't have these types of laws in place, what we have on our highways, we probably have mass carnage. Okay, so under this particular rule of law, cargo must not leak. It must not spill. It cannot blow off a vehicle. It cannot fall off or fall through a vehicle, and it must not become dislodged from the vehicle. And there can only be minimal movement on the load. Now, I went through that pretty quickly, but minimal movement on the load is a very good point to bring up, and it takes us to G-forces, or the force of gravity, when we're talking about how much a load can move when it's secured on the back of that truck and moving down the interstate. Now, if it's moving forward, if the truck is moving forward and it's braking, it can only be 80% driving straight. It can only be 80% as far as the G-force, okay? Because that's what the regulations, when it comes to this particular section of trucking, it relates to G-forces, or the force of gravity. So they can't move but so much. Now, like I said, forward force For braking, it's 80% or 80 G-forces driving straight. For rearward force, it's 50% cargo weight. And this is when it's accelerating, when it's going up an incline, or when it's braking in reverse. That's for the rearward force, 50% cargo weight. For sideways force, this is when the cargo, this is how much it can move when it's turning. This is how much it can move when it's changing lanes. And this is how much it can move when it's braking when turning. It can move 50% cargo weight as far as the 50% G-force. And then upward force, this is when you go over a bump in the road, when you're cresting over a hill. But this situation is, the cargo must be fully contained. And that is 20% cargo weight. Okay? So I think that covers it. But as I said before, if you have any questions about it, just feel free to rewind the video, because I'm going to keep going forward with cargo securement basics probably for the next few days.